implementation of the 2019-2023 State Dementia Plan. Giving this presentation today is Dementia Friends and Informational Session. So please welcome Caitlin.
Marshall. I work at the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, and today we're going to do a Dementia Friends information session. Has anybody done an information session before? I guess if you probably did, you would be here. Did everybody get a handout? Yeah? Okay, good. I'm going to try to keep this pretty informal just because we do have a small group, so you have questions along the way, just feel free to let me know. The information in this presentation is pretty basic. It's all around raising awareness and reducing stigma around Alzheimer's and dementia. We should take about the whole hour, but I'll make sure to leave some time at the end for questions if you have any questions about the presentation, or I can also answer questions about things that are happening around the state regarding Alzheimer's and dementia as well, if you have questions about that. These are just some of the things that we should learn today. Some of those include the 10 early signs and symptoms, also strategies to effectively communicate with someone with dementia, and also learn about some of the resources in the community. Okay, so there's actually a lot of activities that come with this presentation, and again, we'll keep it pretty informal. But the first sort of activity is just to share, when you hear the term dementia, what comes to your mind when you hear the word dementia? Just shout something out. Forgetting? Memory? Forgetting, memory?
Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's, yep. Anger. Elderly, yeah. So in general, I think, when we think about dementia, we think about Alzheimer's, a lot of things that we think about are pretty negative. Anger, frustration, fear, I hear a lot of times too, some kind of suppression. And it tends to be pretty negative. So dementia is not actually a specific disease, but it's an overall term that describes a wide range of symptoms. I think we might have heard that earlier today in the presentation. But Alzheimer's is the most common. 60 to 80% of cases are Alzheimer's disease, and others include Lewy body, frontotemporal, and vascular dementia as well. We won't go in depth into these different types of diseases, but it's just important to know that there's different types. They do present differently. Parkinson's is also in there too. I know we've heard a little bit about Parkinson's today. So just sharing a little bit about the different types. Okay, so what is Dementia Friends? So Dementia Friends was actually started in the UK, and it's a global movement. So I know the map is really small, but if you look at all those blue dots, you can see that it's being implemented in countries in Europe, it's being implemented in Asia, Africa, obviously North America, and in the United States, it was originally brought to the United States by our neighbors to the west, Minnesota, and then Wisconsin actually adopted it just last fall in September of 2018. So we're relatively new adopters, but it's basically a global...
I think we're going to get started on our next presentation.
Oh. Can you guys hear that?
I'll go find out if
Okay,
we can get
thank you. Well, you'll just hear both presentations at the same time. You'll be extra smart today. Yeah, get double credit, exactly. Okay, so Dementia Friends came to Wisconsin in 2018, and currently, as it says, there's 2.5 million Dementia Friends globally. I think in Wisconsin, I just looked it up this morning, and I think we're at 1,600. So we're slowly ramping up our efforts in Wisconsin for Dementia Friends. Oh, and I should say too, so I mentioned before I work for the Department of Health Services, but the license holder for this whole program is the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute. So they're the ones that are working to implement this program in Wisconsin. I don't think your voice is not working anymore. Nope, I think you're right.
It is working on it. So you don't have to hold it there. It's just
Okay. I'll use my teacher voice. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to look at is the 10 early signs and symptoms of specifically Alzheimer's disease. So the first we already talked about earlier is memory loss. And so the difference between memory loss in Alzheimer's versus normal aging is with Alzheimer's disease, it starts affecting daily life. You start forgetting things, not being able to remember at any point, important dates or events, and also having to repeat the same information over and over again. Whereas in normal aging, you might forget what day it is, for example, but then be able to remember it later. Or you might forget an appointment, but then remember that you had the appointment and reschedule. So things like that. The second sign or symptom is challenges in planning or solving problems. I've heard before that Alzheimer's is, it's really challenging to plan a party when you have Alzheimer's disease because all the steps that you need to take to plan that party or like plan the holidays, there's a lot of steps involved and it's really challenging for someone with Alzheimer's to be able to do that. I tried this one. Okay. Otherwise, I'm going to bring that one. Okay. Okay, that's all right. So yeah, planning and problem solving is a challenge. With normal aging, this might look like having challenges or having, mixing up a charge in a checkbook for people that balance their checkbook, or just making some simple errors but being able to fix them later. A third sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks at home or work or at leisure. I know Andy upstairs was talking about really having some challenges at work and not being able to remember things that he had told his coworkers or having conversations with people. So that can be an early sign or symptom. Normal aging would be, maybe forgetting that you had a conversation but then remembering it later.
The definition of grief and loss. Well, we know what goes on. The thing that I think was so...
Linda is great, by the way, upstairs. She's wonderful. All right.
Listen, to be here and want...
Oh, hey, Rob.
It's not working down here?
Well, it's working. It's working from upstairs. We're just doing both presentations at the same time down here, so we're getting extra smart.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. We're getting Linda's presentation like jumping down. This is working now though, right? It's working now. Hey,
She was adjusting.
Okay.
Hopefully that was.
Hopefully that's it. Okay. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. The fourth symptom is confusion with time and place. Are you confused? I'm kind of confused. Okay, so losing track of dates. I know one of the caregivers upstairs was talking about how her husband came down in like shorts in the middle of winter, just confusing seasons. That's pretty typical in Alzheimer's disease. And normal aging would be like confusing the day of the week but being able to recall it later. I think that happens to all of us frequently. So today it feels like Friday to me, I don't know why. It's Thursday. Yeah. Okay. The fifth symptom is trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. One of the things that drives me crazy is in hotel room or hotels. When you're in a hotel and the carpet in hotels are terrible, especially for people with dementia. They have all these cool designs and they have like different blocks and things. They're terrible for dementia because there's a lot of challenges with spatial awareness. So there might be a square on the floor, and they might perceive it as like a hole in the floor. And so they're afraid to keep walking because they think that they're gonna like drop through a hole. So hotel carpet really drives me crazy. So normal aging would maybe look like vision changes related to cataract. So more of a physical concern with the eyes versus sort of a cognitive issue with vision changes. The sixth symptom is problems with words in speaking or writing, so new issues. So not being able to come up with words, not being able to
right? Like they used to a lot of spelling issues. And in normal aging, sometimes having trouble finding the right word. Again, I think that happens to many of us. The seventh sign or symptom is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace your steps. So I think for many of us, if we lose something, we're able to think, okay, I was here, and then I was in the kitchen, and then I was in the bedroom. Oh, my keys are in the bedroom. But that is challenging for people with dementia. The eighth early sign or symptom is decreased or poor judgment. I think that was pretty clear, again, with the caregiver that showed the story of her husband that just like went and bought a car. That can happen not just for people with frontotemporal dementia, but also for people with Alzheimer's diseases, that poor judgment. The ninth early sign or symptom is withdrawal from work or social activities. So for people that are trying to navigate this new sort of, these new issues that they're having, a lot of times they'll withdraw from social activities because they don't want to be embarrassed, they don't want to be in front of their friends and have some of the challenges that they're having. So that's the ninth sign and symptom. And then 10 is changes in mood and personality. And in normal aging, that would maybe just look like developing a specific way of doing things, and when your schedule gets disrupted, you can be frustrated by that. So those are the normal aging signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. So the next piece, I'm going to play a video, and we will hopefully see if it works.
I tested it earlier.
Found myself saying something or trying to say something, and then I realized that the word didn't even fit in there or something like that. So I just kept, thinking about it. It didn't happen every day. It didn't happen, hardly at all. And then it just kept getting a little bit worse. I think some of the family members thought something was off, I guess. Did any of them think dementia? Probably not.
Just to doing things and doing it right and doing it, and all of a sudden, you can't remember this and you can't really, where's your hand, it's like a dark area. It's like being in darkness,
And I think everybody that's in this disease, people walk away from it. They're afraid of the attention, with mental illness. And that bothers me that they do that.
I have to be aware that any moment my brain might not tell me where to go.
My first reaction was that when beat this disease.
I can't spell anything like I used to be able to just spell it, just write a check. Now I'm not clear with a thing as how you do it or anything. All that stuff that I thought I was so good at is gone, or on the way gone.
Remembering names, I think that's the biggest issue with me.
people sometimes it kind of strange because I don't know, I'm saying what they want me to say or talk the way they want me to talk.
When I started putting my shirts on backwards, that was one of my early signs too.
Laughing, that's why I have a cane now. And that's because I have a tendency to walk sideways. Don't do a trip.
Darkness is not good for me, and I tend to trip or fall, and my coordination isn't as they used to be.
So I don't cook anymore either because when I cook, and it doesn't matter if someone's in the house or not, I just start cooking and I forget about using well, but that's okay.
Stay active, even a little bit active, keeps you interested.
And I like to be around people.
When people would struggle, I'd go over and help them. And I found it very uplifting to help other people.
You know, you can't deny this disease. If you deny it, you're going to get in trouble.
The singing is very, very good to the brain. We know that. And the more we can do that, the better off we'll be.
People that have dementia, I think, are very unique. I think they have a lot to offer still.
It's an attitude here. You have to get up in the morning and say, okay, I got to do this today. You know, it's just one thing.
I could say to a person that it's going to be all right. And I could say to a person that depend on God. Because with God, everything is possible. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed. I mean, I had cancer. Was I ashamed of having cancer? No. Why would I be? Why should I be ashamed of having cancer?
I'm glad for 14 years with this disease. It's not going to go away. I accept that. Only thing I guess with my future is that I'll work as hard as I can to stay alive and function.
All right, any initial reactions to the video? Any thoughts? Yes.
When she said, if you deny it, you're going to get in trouble,
Yeah.
I thought it very profound. I can apply that to a bunch of places in life. And then being honest about this, finding somehow this comforting support to be able to face it and say, hey, this is where things are. That's why I wish.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I really, yeah, go ahead, please.
That man that said he's had it for 14 years and he's going to fight every minute and everything to keep living.
Yeah.
I don't know where he's coming from because what I'm working with at home, he's just laying in bed every day.
Right.
He's just, I can do everything and try and get him motivated and it's not happening.
Yeah.
He's just in a chair or in bed and he's just, I can't do anything for him anymore. Why?
Yeah, when I first saw this video, the 14 years really surprised me, and I think it is important to keep in mind that everybody with dementia is different.
Right.
But it is surprising to me that after 14 years, he's still in pretty good shape.
But after 2,
Yeah.
I would hope to have a little bit of that hope.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Everybody's different with the disease. The thing that I really like about the video that they created is, it's all people living with the disease, and so we get to hear from them and hear, their experience that they're living with. The second thing that I really appreciate is that it was created in the Midwest, and so you get those really nice long O's, like when she says the stove. I don't know if anybody picked up on that, or like if she goes to yoga. Yeah, I really appreciate that. So the video that we watched. And really what Dementia Friends is all about is about these 5 key messages. So I don't know if you picked up on them when we were watching the video, but the 5 key messages are really what we're going to focus on today, and they are on the handout in the bottom right corner. So we're just going to go through those quickly. So the first key message is that dementia is not a normal part of aging. And so I think that, for a lot of people, they just assume that as you get older, you're just going to get this disease, and that's not true. I think as you age, your risk increases, but that doesn't mean that you're 100% going to get some type of dementia. So we review the normal parts of aging, and so some of those things can sort of look like symptoms, but memory loss is much more noticeable with the actual disease. So dementia is not a normal part of aging. Second is that dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. So again, dementia is sort of a collection of symptoms. It's not an actual disease or a diagnosis necessarily. And again, Alzheimer's is the most common disease of the brain that causes dementia. And basically what Alzheimer's does is that it slowly kills brain cells, which is why it causes the different symptoms that we see. Okay, the third key message is that dementia is not just about having memory problems. So again, memory loss and memory concerns are a big piece of Alzheimer's disease, but there's a lot more pieces of the disease than just that. So it can affect judgment, like we talked about before, some of those planning skills, communicating, mood changes, etc. Number 4, it is possible to have a good quality of life with dementia. So I think we've heard from folks upstairs and then also through the video that people with dementia can still continue to live a normal life. They can still participate in activities, they can still go to yoga, they can still be in choir, they can still, in many cases, they can still work for a long time. But they can still have a good quality of life with dementia. It's the people around them. And there's one of the women in the video said, "I'm doing really good because the person who's caring for me is doing really good." So again, caring for the caregiver, because if they're doing well, then the person with dementia is going to be doing well. Okay, and then the fifth key message is that there's more to the person with dementia. So again, you pointed out that the person who had cancer in the video said that, I wasn't ashamed of having cancer, I'm not going to be ashamed of having dementia. And so just thinking that there's more to the person with dementia, that the disease doesn't define them. Okay, so now we're going to move into the bookcase story. And that is page 3 of the handout. So, in the bookcase story, basically we are going to read through a story and it kind of shows this analogy of the bookcase. So, everyone's brain is affected differently by dementia. So for right now, let's imagine a 70-year-old woman who has Alzheimer's disease. Now imagine there's a full bookcase beside her, so the one on the left. There's a full bookcase beside her, and each book inside the bookcase represents one of her skills or her memories. On the top shelf are her memories of facts and her skill for thinking in complex or complicated ways. For people with dementia, the top or outer part of the brain is damaged first. So skills like math, using language, and keeping one's behavior in check are all in this part of the brain. So at the top, the facts and complex thinking is what we're talking about. So when the woman gets dementia, and dementia rocks the woman's bookcase, the books on the top shelf begin to fall out, and the woman may not remember what she ate for breakfast, or that she has to pay for items at the drugstore, or that someone came to visit her this morning. Emotions and feelings are lowered down within the bookcase, just like they are in the inner or the lower part of the brain. This is the instinct area of the brain, so feelings like happiness, love, frustration, and sensing respect reside here. As dementia continues to rock her bookcase, the books on these lower shelves stay for a much longer time. The bookcase story helps explain different thinking skills and memories and the effects of dementia. Facts and complex thinking skills will follow in quickly, whereas emotions and feelings will remain longer. So returning to the 7-year-old woman with Alzheimer's disease for a real-life example, a daughter or a son may visit to find that their mother can no longer remember their name. She will remember, however, feelings of love and comfort and support from the visit. Similarly, if the mother and the child were to argue, the mother might not remember the details of the argument, but she will remember the feelings of anger and hurt from the exchange that they had. So as the dementia continues, the woman might lose other thinking skills. She may no longer be able to manage her finances, complete activities she once enjoyed, or communicate with family and friends. Dementia affects each person differently, and remembering that dementia also affects the factual and emotional parts of the brain differently. The top part that manages facts like faces, names, dates, and places is affected first, whereas those facts are easily forgotten, and the lower part that manages emotions is affected later. So feelings and emotions aren't lost as quickly as facts. So the bookcase story just helps us to understand sort of the different parts of the brain, the different parts that are affected, and the different pieces of memory that are affected as well. So this slide, you might have seen this before, but basically what this slide shows is on the left is a healthy brain, and then on the right is a brain that has been affected by advanced Alzheimer's disease. So we can see that Alzheimer's physically affects the brain. It physically, again, is killing those brain cells and is literally shrinking the brain. So during the diagnosis procedure, and when they do, like, we heard about MRI scans or PET scans, this sort of shrinking of the brain is what they're looking for as part of that diagnosis procedure. Okay, so the next part that we're going to do is an everyday tasks activity. So I think most people are at a table with someone, otherwise you can do this on your own. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a couple minutes to basically just write down a list of steps that it takes to make a sandwich. It can be any kind of sandwich you want. We've made a sandwich.
Easier to grab.
So I'm curious, for each of the groups, where did you start? What was your number one step?
Mine was feel hungry.
Feel hunger. That is that's like zero. Ground zero is feel hunger. Decide what type of sandwich. Very good. So decide what type of sandwich. Good. What do we have here with making a sandwich?
First step,
Yeah.
for me, was find a loaf of bread.
Find a loaf of bread. That's a good first step. Yeah, exactly. How about over here?
Slice bread.
Slice the bread. All right. So bread, finding a sandwich. Very good. How about your last step? What was your last step?
What additional things do you need?
Oh, okay. Sure. So what else do you need with your sandwich? Okay, how about here?
The last step, I just cover up just where I put the sandwich, second piece of bread.
So like putting the sandwich together. Oh, and how many steps did you guys have? You stopped counting? Okay.
I have 17.
17. Okay. All right. How about here? How many steps did you have?
It's
7 steps. All right. Very good. How about over here? What was your last step and how many steps did you have?
The last step was put the dish in the dishwasher, and I went 9 steps.
9 steps. Wow. You guys were really economic with your steps over here. How about in the back here?
I've had 25 steps.
Oh my gosh.
Apparently, I worried about being able to grab the knife and then getting the knife into the peanut butter.
Sure.
As too good.
Did you take the lid off the peanut butter before you put the knife in the peanut butter?
Each of those.
Sure. Did we make a sandwich here? What kind of sandwich did you make?
I made a meat, cheese, pickle, mustard, lettuce.
Wow, that's quite the sandwich. How many steps did you have? 37 steps. I suppose you had to like get the pickle out of the pickle jar and all that. Wow. What was your first step?
Open, cover, and find plate.
Okay, yeah, very good. So this is kind of an interesting activity, but I think basically what it shows is that there's a lot of steps to do something very simple like make a sandwich. And so for someone with dementia, where getting things confused, putting things in the wrong places, putting a loaf of bread in the fridge doesn't really seem that weird when you know that someone with dementia has a hard time putting all of these things together. So it's just interesting to see all of the different steps and realizing that it's just really, really challenging with all of those steps. I know, so my grandma recently passed away from Alzheimer's disease, and she would have a really hard time brushing her teeth. and eventually someone had to, brush her teeth for her. But even with that too, thinking about the steps it takes to brush your teeth, there's actually kind of a lot of steps, and it's something that hopefully most people do twice a day, hopefully at least once a day. Once a week, maybe a little bit more than that. Okay, so everybody passes. All right, so I think we've heard a little bit about communication challenges when it comes to Alzheimer's disease and dementia, but I will just kind of go over them briefly. And this is a page also, I think it's the last page on the handout, is communication practices and communication tips. So again, communication is really challenging when when your brain is struggling to interpret the information that's coming into your brain, and also then having to react to that and then say those words. Your brain is actually doing a lot of processes when you're communicating. So people with dementia have these challenges, and some of the specific ones are using familiar words repeatedly, inventing new words to describe familiar objects. One of the ones that I've heard recently is calling a watch a wrist clock. Pretty inventive. Makes sense, but isn't technically the right word. Easily losing his or her train of thought. Reverting to a first or birth language. I think the presenter who was down here earlier was talking about how she was working with someone who was reverting back to Dutch. And so, reverting back to Spanish, reverting back to mom, reverting back to that first language. And also having difficulty organizing words logically. So maybe their sentences start getting scrambled, and you can kind of understand what they mean, but the sentence is definitely not sort of a normal sentence, if you will. So a couple just tips, and I think that these are pretty straightforward, but tips for communicating with someone with dementia: treating the person with dignity and respect, being patient, just giving them time to process what you're saying, and being able to communicate back, being aware of your feelings. Making sure, again, to the woman who was speaking here before, talked a lot about body language. And, body language is a big part of our communication and how you interpret someone's communication. So not just the words that you're saying, but the tone of your voice, your body language, because people with dementia, again, with the emotional piece of their brain still working, they can pick up on those emotions that you're having. So if you, are really frustrated and you come in with this really angry face and you're kind of, overbearing, that can automatically make the person with dementia very, very scared, very frightened, wanting to be defensive, and I think that's just pretty normal for people to feel that way. So yeah, just some tips there. Some other tips: if someone's having trouble communicating, offer comfort and reassurance, avoid criticizing or correcting. It's never good to argue with someone with dementia. I know a lot of times we talk about going into their reality, which can be very challenging, especially for people that have worked in the mental health field, because in the mental health field you want to pull people back to reality, but with dementia, if they're in a different reality, their brain cells are dying. There's no way that you're going to bring them back to our reality. So some people with dementia do have hallucinations. Sometimes it's sometimes it's children, sometimes it's animals. But as long as the hallucinations aren't concerning to that person or frightening to that person, there's really no reason to try to pull them back into our reality. So just avoid arguing with that person. If there's kittens that are over in the corner over there and I'm really excited about the kittens, it's fine. Ask about the kittens. What color are they? What are their names? It's not appropriate to argue with someone with dementia. And also, if they're doing a lot of word finding, again, being patient, but you might want to offer a guess. Just say, is this what you're thinking of, or is this what you're talking about? Also, not using the phrase, "don't you remember?" because they don't remember. So, don't you remember? I already told you that, we were going to Jimmy's house this weekend. They don't remember because their brain doesn't let them remember. Okay. brief review of the 5 key messages. So dementia is not a normal part of aging. Dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. Dementia is not just about having memory problems. It is possible to have a good quality of life with dementia, and that there's more to the person than the disease that they have. Okay, so the last piece of the Dementia Friends curriculum is just talking a little bit about what dementia-friendly means to all of us, and sort of how we can put the understanding that we have, that we've learned really throughout the day-to-day into action. So I guess just starting out with the question, when you think about the phrase dementia-friendly, and I know we've referenced the purple angel outside, which is often the sort of logo, if you will, for dementia-friendly, but what does dementia-friendly mean to you? Yeah, in the back.
That person is welcome in my space, even with their dementia.
Yeah, absolutely. So that person's welcome. Anybody else? Yeah.
That I or my place of work or my place of store, whatever it is, it like has a knowledge or understanding of what you have. So in case of the store, like if they were to pick something up and they can put it down, they're trying to steal, that's
Sure, absolutely. So in a place of business or work that they understand sort of what the symptoms mean, and if the person with dementia did something that's maybe out of character or something like, shoplifting, that, they don't assume ill will, that it's just part of the disease. It's not the person, it's the disease that's sort of coming out. Yeah, those are all really, really great, great things. I think one thing about being welcome in the community is that, and there were a couple of the caregivers that talked about it upstairs, is that a lot of times people feel really isolated because it's challenging. It's really challenging. And I know a lot of people here in the room are caregivers and know that there's a very large challenge with caring for the person. And so getting out and seeing friends, and a lot of times a lot of family are in denial, and they don't want to see that person because they don't want to experience what's going on. They don't want to be part of that, and it can be really, really challenging. So I think as much as we can make people feel welcome, both the person with dementia and the caregiver, I think it helps to pull them out of that isolated state. So I think that's really, really important. Okay, so the final piece in the handout, there's a piece called Understanding into Action. And so what Dementia Friends, so the 2 big pieces of Dementia Friends is, the first one is the 5 key messages, which we've reviewed, and the video was all about the 5 key messages. And then the second piece is turning your understanding into action. So what that means is basically just committing to an action, and this is just for you. I'm not going to collect it. I'm not going to follow up with you in a year to figure out if you've done your action, but it's just an action that you commit to yourself, either getting in touch with someone that you know who's living with dementia, maybe it could be a caregiver as well, just committing to being patient, like if you're in line at the grocery store and the person in front of you seems to be having some challenges paying, just being patient, maybe offering to help them, just being more understanding, or maybe it's carrying out a personal action. I'll share you my personal action, actually, that I committed to when I first became a dementia friend. So I think I mentioned that my grandma recently passed away with Alzheimer's disease, and she lived for about 12 years with the disease, or at least 12 years that we knew. She was probably living with it longer. She was in memory care for a long time, and she was in Fargo. My whole family's from that part of the country, and so she was in memory care. And we like to send out Christmas cards every year, right? We like to send Christmas cards to family and friends. And so my grandma had recently moved into this memory care facility, and so I asked my mom, can I have grandma's new address so that I can send her a Christmas card? Just keeping her in the family, right? She's not excommunicated from the family because she has Alzheimer's disease. And my mom said, well, she doesn't really remember you anymore, so she probably won't appreciate the Christmas card because she won't know who you are. I said, okay, that's fine. But even if she doesn't know who I am and she doesn't recognize my face, I think she'll appreciate still being remembered and knowing that she's going to get a Christmas card from us every year. So my mom still didn't give me the address, and so I actually called the facility and asked for my grandma's address. And that was my first action, was just to send my grandma a Christmas card. So it can be as simple as just sending somebody a Christmas card, but just having that personal action, I think really, it might seem small, but I think if those, what did I say, 13.2 million people around the world are each doing a small action, I think it turns into a larger movement and something that really means something. Would anybody mind sharing their personal action or their piece that they wrote down? Yeah, go for it. Learn and review. That's awesome. That's great. How about, did you want to, yeah?
Mine was similar to yours. I was going to try to write letters to my grandmother because she can no longer use the phone properly.
That's great. Writing letters. I think that's a skill that we don't really have anymore. It's just writing letters and like putting a stamp on something and putting it in the mail. I have a grandma who would really appreciate that. I also have another grandma who uses Facebook more than I do. So sending my grandma a Facebook message, I don't know. Yeah, in the back.
3 years ago, my sister lost the physical ability to open an envelope, and so I switched to postcards.
Oh, that's a good idea. Switching to postcards. Yeah, that's a great idea. That's another lost art.
I know,
Yeah, what's a
little
postcard?
hard to find a postcard, but so far possible.
Yeah.
Make your own.
Oh, that's funny. Cool. So the last piece of this is just sharing community resources. I think many of you are connected with the community, but obviously the ADA and Disability Resource Center, there's one in Dutch County. They have the dementia care specialist, Rob, who organized all this, and he's fabulous. There's also the Alzheimer's Association. They're wonderful as well. And the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute with their diagnostic clinics. You can always reach out to them with questions. So yeah, there's a lot of community resources out there to support people. That's all I have for you today.